Good morning. While building technology has continued to advance throughout the world, it has certainly been expedited during today's current pandemic. We all know that. With social distancing requirements, technology such as modular construction allows for less workers to be together on a confined job site, or new screening technologies are mandated by all landlords and business owners for both safety and for potential contact tracing and for tracing how many people are in an office space at once. Today's panels will highlight the trends in technology that are transforming the operations of today's design and construction industries. Our panelists will discuss the fastest growing project delivery methods, the power of data to improve efficiencies, and the impact of information technology on building modern institutions. My name is Tom Acatelli, and I am co-deputy editor for news for the Commercial Observer, the leading media company covering the commercial real estate industry. Thank you for joining us this morning for the second annual Building Technology Forum, the sixth conference in our 2020 Design and Construction Conference series. Each half-day conference features important topics, bringing together a group of dedicated pros looking to expand their knowledge and to share their knowledge of key subjects. More information is available about our programs online at commercialobserver.com/events. Before I start the program, I would like to acknowledge our current sponsors and partners. The Platinum sponsors: AKF Group, Caldwell Wingate, Fisher Brothers, Jbmb, Lend-Lease, PTS Consulting, and Witham, as well as our association partners, GNYCUC, and the New York Building Congress. So just a couple of housekeeping items before we get started. We encourage everyone to stay engaged throughout the program and enter your questions to the speakers using the Q&A portal. Each panel will get to as many questions as possible at the end of their sessions. If you're looking to connect with today's speakers, let us know. You'll receive a live poll at the conclusion of each panel asking if you'd like to connect with the speakers. We'll pass your contact information along to them, to all the speakers that you select. Now I would like to pass it over to Jeremiah Laureano, Project Executive at Caldwell Wingate, to introduce our opening keynote. Over to you, Jeremiah.
Thank you, Tom. Thanks for having me. It is my pleasure to now introduce our keynote speaker, Ken Fisher, partner at Fisher Brothers. As co-managing partner of Fisher Brothers, Ken heads the third generation leadership team of one of the most successful family-owned real estate development and management companies, with a portfolio of more than 9 million square feet of commercial, residential, and retail space in New York, Washington, D.C., and Las Vegas. Ken brings nearly 40 years of experience in the real estate industry in his guidance and oversight of the company's daily operations and management, construction, and leasing of the portfolio, including but not limited to 299 Park Avenue, 1345 Avenue of the Americas, Park Avenue Plaza, and 605 3rd Avenue. We look forward to hearing from Ken and Tom of Commercial Observer during this opening keynote fireside chat, where they will discuss evolving technology, innovation, tenant needs, and real estate changes. Welcome to you both.
Thank you.
Ken, you hear me?
I do.
Welcome.
Thank you.
So we have about 15 minutes, so let's dive right in.
Okay.
Fisher Brothers has been around for a long time, more than a century. How is technology there evolving, And how was it evolving pre-COVID, and how did COVID affect that technological evolution? Let's start there.
Well, we've always been, I mean, our core philosophy has always been tenant focused. Customer service is the most important thing to us. And we realize now that technology plays a very important role in servicing our tenants and also providing a safe atmosphere, not only for our tenants, but for our employees. So what we've done going forward here, starting 6 months ago with the onset of this pandemic, is we realized early on that things were going to change and that technology was going to play a very important part. But what we tried to do was we tried to take the things that we really understood would need to happen and incorporate them and mix them in with digital art, tech-forward art displays and so forth in an elegant way. So not only did we employ tech, but we employ tech in creative ways that I think people will find very interesting. Also, the new project that we just opened up in Las Vegas, my cousin Winston opened Area 15, which is an experiential retail that is tech-centered, that will provide an amazing experience for people that go there.
Where in Vegas?
Right off the strip, by Palace Stations, if you know that area.
Yeah. Can you talk some more about what technologies you're using to make tenants and their employees feel safer about returning to the office and using the office?
Sure. Early on we weren't sure about whether thermal testing was going to be something that we wanted to employ or not. And I think ultimately we decided to go with thermal testing to give one more layer of protection. So we actually incorporated AI centered technology with our thermal scanners and temperature taking. And then we also had a secondary backup of a healthcare professional that would discreetly take their temperature if the thermal scanner found them to have a temperature at all. So we actually incorporated something that was discreet but was necessary as a backup. We incorporated hospital grade filtration systems in our HVAC, utilizing UV light technology, which we actually started a year or two ago just to provide cleaner air for our tenants. And as it turned out, the system that we employed had a 99% kill rate for microbes, including COVID. So we actually started that and we're finishing now. We have, gosh, we've done so much. We've taken what we already had with Bluetooth technology for our turnstiles. People can get through it in a hands-free experience using their phones, and now we're incorporating the elevators into that as well. And that's coming soon at 299 Park and 1345. Okay. So lots been done.
Can you talk a little bit more about what's coming to those two towers, 1345 Avenue of the Americas and 299 Park?
Yes, we as I said before, we incorporated technology in ways that we thought would be very creative, in addition to being very necessary. So with the things that we did already to provide a safe atmosphere, not only for tenants but also for our employees, we decided to incorporate some creative art, which I can't give away. Okay. It's coming soon, but it's really going to be something special.
How soon do you think?
Oh, within the next couple of weeks.
Oh, okay.
Yep. At 299, we've done actually a 60-foot digital art display that is interactive, which you'll see actually starting next week. And at 1345 back in the park, which we also made, we installed Wi-Fi there, so people had the tech experience sitting in the park, but also an immersive experience back there, which I think you'll find very interesting.
I want to get to sort of the work from home phenomenon and the frustration that many people are feeling that's sort of dragging on and on months now. Can you talk about, as we start to see New Yorkers return to the office, how are you thinking, as an owner, how are you thinking about things like amenities, shared workspaces?
Well, we actually started a company called At Ease,
Okay.
which was our hospitality based company that was going to actually run our amenities in all of our properties and hopefully outside of our properties as well. It incorporates a conference center, state-of-the-art conference facility, because we think that people will be utilizing conference facilities more. Look at Zoom now and how people are utilizing that technology. We've got vertical catering, and we have a wellness gym area. All of this will be serviced by an app that tenants will be able to utilize. So the wellness is going to be a big part, obviously, of what we do. But we're very proud of my daughter Crystal, what she's done and Mark Capuro and the work that they've done in beginning the At Ease brand, and I think something that will fall right into the Fisher Brothers style of servicing our tenants in a first-class way, and even the finishes and the things that we've done down there are something special and really need to be seen.
It sounds like it's a lot of touchless, like just sort of the ease of entry and exit. Is that the case?
Well, the areas that we couldn't make touchless, we installed antimicrobial wraps where the virus can't live very long. But the ultimate goal for us is to make the experience as hands-off as possible. And what that means is, I think going forward is that so much of what we're doing right now, we had probably planned to do within the next couple of years. But because of circumstances, because of what's happened in the last 6 months, it's forced us to accelerate the things that we were looking at and accelerate to the extent that these technologies were available to us. And so we found that many were, but we're still constantly evolving in that respect. What we're doing is constantly doing due diligence. And I think something that we did, which was very creative, and I think the tenants find very helpful, is the fact that we created a website for our tenants to access so that they could see not only what we've done to the properties already, but things that we were looking to do into the future. I think it was important for them to know that, because obviously tenants need to feel safe. And for us, we never shut down at the onset of the pandemic. Our key employees that came in during that period of time, just unbelievable people. I mean, and really dedicated. And we started early on. Understanding what was going on, I think, was the important thing, was having an understanding of what was happening, and an understanding of what was going to happen into the future in the months ahead, so that we could actually provide the tenants as safe and as clean an atmosphere as we could. And I think at this point we've done that. It's up to the tenants now. If they feel safe, they'll come in. If they feel as though they can get to the office safely, they'll come in. But what we've done is we have provided them with as safe and as clean an environment as we possibly could.
Before we close out today, Ken, I want to talk about your charitable work with the Intrepid and elsewhere. And can you talk about that and how technology has affected it?
Yes, well, the Intrepid unfortunately had to close, the Intrepid Museum. And it's kind of forced us to do some thinking. We just opened up on the 25th of September, and obviously at 25% with social distancing and so forth, but it's forced us to kind of look for creative ways to kind of expand the Intrepid experience, making the Intrepid more interactive, using mapping and so forth. And we are in the process of doing that now. As a matter of fact, one of the things I'm looking at is taking a piece of the ship and making it a conference facility. We're actually looking at that now. Because again, I think, with Zoom technology and what's been going on, I think that we'll find more conferences going into the future. And I think the Intrepid would be a great place to do it. Fisher House, of which I'm co-chairman of the Intrepid, I'm chairman of the Fisher House Foundation, which has 90 houses worldwide. And so what we had to do, because those houses had to close because obviously families couldn't be part of the healing process anymore. And so what we did was we had to think of creative ways, and technology played a big part in that. We offered Facebook portals to our families, to our guest families, so that they could connect with their loved ones. And the program right now, even though the houses are not being utilized in the capacity that they were built for, they're housing healthcare professionals, which makes me very proud, because at least the houses are playing a key role in that. And so we think that that's going to be something that at least will continue at least into the near future. And hopefully this thing ends soon, whether we have a vaccine or we have some kind of a treatment or whatever. Hopefully this thing ends soon, but until it does, the only thing that we can do is we have to be creative in our employment of technology, and we have to make sure that our core philosophy of being tenant focused and also human focused, if you will, keep evolving on a tech basis so that our buildings will evolve with it. And ultimately the experience that the tenants will have will be a safe and a clean environment that everybody will prosper.
Well, Ken, this seems like a good place to leave off. We could go on and on, but thank you very much for joining us this morning.
Thanks, Tom. I appreciate it very much.
Take care. Okay, so for our first panel of the day, we have AR, VR, and modular construction, how technology is driving creative real estate and construction. This panel will be moderated by Justin Ohoro, partner, architecture and engineering team leader at Witham. The panelists will include Jim Barrett, Vice President and Chief Innovation Officer at Turner Construction, Nora Swanson, Director of Design Technology at AKF Group, Mark Stutzman, Chief Technology Officer, Area 15 and Fisher Brothers, and Brian Sweeney, Head of Operations at Assembly OSM. So Justin, I will turn it over to you right now. Thank you.
Sure. Thanks so much, Tom. And thanks also to the Commercial Observer and Berman Group for putting this together. I always love participating in these events, and this one in particular, because of a shared passion for technology and innovation. So I'm looking forward to hearing what the panelists have to say. We will skip the introduction. Certainly, Tom, you gave a high-level intro in terms of title. There's expanded bios in the program materials, and I'll invite the panelists to kind of give a little thumbnail on themselves when answering the first question. As you said, Tom, we'll kind of have a segment on AR, a segment on VR, and then segment on maybe other technologies. And certainly we will be monitoring the Q&A section. So if anybody has any questions for the panelists, please throw them out. That being said, let's kind of jump right into it. And I'll throw the first question to all the panelists. Nora, I'll start with you, then I'll kind of move the way everyone's organized on my screen. As we heard in the opening keynote, and as we all know, COVID-19 has pushed all companies to either adopt or accelerate the broad utilization of technology to enable remote work, adhere to the distancing requirements, accomplish any number of other tasks. So please tell us a little bit about your role, the impact COVID-19 has had on your job, and what technologies have been most important to you.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Justin. So I am Nora Swanson with AKF Group. I am the Director of Design Technologies. I am also responsible for AKF's strategic technology plan. So really kind of looking ahead at what's coming in the industry and how we can accelerate its use. I think we've seen great acceleration during this time of pandemic. My own experience and what I've seen and heard from others in the industry, that we're seeing companies become more agile and accept and accelerate technologies, tenfold of what they used to. So most companies got up and running probably within 2 weeks in regards to remote work, both policies and technologies. And, previous to this, companies have struggled for years, and it probably would have been well over a year to come up to the point that people were at in March. So I think agility and acceleration of response are certainly something that we've seen, and that I'm looking forward to hopefully maintaining that pace in the future.
Sure, thanks. Mark, you're next moving clockwise. What about you?
Hey there. Yeah, so I'm Mark Stutzman. I'm the CTO of both Fisher Brothers and Area 15. Responsibilities are what you would expect, right? So I'm fully responsible for the technological vision of both companies, implementation, and most recently, figuring out ways to allow technology to enable safe return to work. And at Area 15, a safe, experiential, immersive experience, right? Which is counterintuitive to what we do, because we are this purpose-built experiential and entertainment complex. We opened last month in Las Vegas. Our model was all around thousands of people coming to our venue every day. And so there's been a whole bunch of interesting challenges that we've faced, both on the Fisher side, with office workers returning to work, and Kenny talked a lot about that and what we're doing to keep our tenants safe as well as our own employees. But on the Area 15 side, it really brought a unique set of challenges, right? We brought in a thermal camera solution that allows us to basically take the temperature of up to 50 people at a time within frame. We brought in AI-based cameras that allow us to use computer vision to recognize when social distancing is not enforced, and we can remedy that quickly. We brought in dynamic counters to let us understand exactly how many guests are in a space, and that includes employees when you think about capacity and restrictions by the state of Nevada. So we've applied technology in a bunch of ways that are frankly mostly invisible to our guests, but are keeping them safe every day. So that's kind of the response to that.
Great, thanks. Brian, continuing around on my screen. What about you?
Yeah, so thanks for inviting me. Brian Sweeney, Head Operations, Assembly OSM. Just quick background, we are a new company, so there's not a lot of information background to us, but it is a company that was incubated by Shop Architects. We are our own entity right now. Everything that's happening, with COVID right now, it's unique for us, having been a startup. So, for us, it was, in one sense, we were kind of well prepared for this right now, because, our team consists from, the West Coast all the way over to Italy. And before COVID hit, we were already kind of in this virtual world of what we've been doing with system design, developing what our product is going to be. So, yeah, so for us, a lot of the tools are all, computer-based, digital-based. There has been a lot of use of the VR, AR. So excited to kind of, I think, dive more into this conversation with everyone. But yeah, that's where we're at. And our focus, again, for anyone who doesn't know, is on offsite manufacturing and delivery of modular buildings. So that's what we do. Yeah.
Excellent. Thanks, Brian. And last but not least, Jim.
Hi, Jim Barrett with Turner Construction. In contrast to Brian, we are a long-lived company. We've been in business for 118 years, founded in New York, and 10,000 employees all over the U.S. and all over the world. My title is Chief Innovation Officer. My job, though, and that of my department, I often think is rather that we try to help people make progress in their lives every day. That people, whether it's Turner staff or it's trade contractors or architects, engineers, or our clients themselves, sometimes are trapped in systems that have a great deal of sort of friction that prevents them from really utilizing their talents. So our job is to bring new methods, new practices, and when appropriate, new technologies to try to free people from inefficiency and waste, and so that they can really realize their greatest potential. In terms of the impact COVID has had, this is, I don't want to be glib about the impact. This is obviously a tragic situation. We continue to sort of be in a very difficult situation in New York City in particular, and people suffered, and there's a great deal of loss as a result of this pandemic. But as a result of that, I think I feel like there's obligation on our part to find meaning out of it, make meaning, this has created I think COVID has created a higher level of sensitivity around the importance of protecting people and protecting health and well-being. Where in the past, I think it was a very good intention and something we always strove for. Now it's very clear and tangible why that's important. And so I think generally people I find are generally more open-minded now about technologies because I think people recognize we may be in a paradigm shift and that we just need new ways of going about our work. From this, I think we're finding new ways of again, sort of protecting people and new ways of working together while still protecting that health and well-being of our employees and others.
Thanks, Jim. And I did just make a mental note of helping people make advancements in their lives every day in defining innovation. I like that. I will give credit to you, though. So I want to dive a little bit deeper into the AR, VR conversation. And Jim, let's just stay with you for a minute. Obviously the technology existed, back in February and before that. But talk about the advancements or the acceleration of the usage. How are the technologies being used today different?
So I'll do one thing. I'll set the stage a little bit by having a broader definition beyond just AR, VR. There's a relatively new term called extended reality, which is capturing more AR, VR, mixed reality. We even go a little broader, I think, so that when we talk about this extended reality, it's about using tools to virtualize the connections between people. So I'll give you like a very sort of bootstrapped example of how people have used new technology or used existing technologies to do new things. In the middle of the pandemic, say, when our work started getting back ramped up, we still had a lot of struggles with, say, like building inspectors. Building inspectors wouldn't come to the job sites. They wouldn't. They were fearful of the risk. And rather than, it was interesting to watch. It was very grassroots. We had multiple projects actually in New York, New Jersey area that started using. They use whether Zoom or Teams with their iPads, and they go out into the field and they bring up the drawings. They bring up the creative virtual meeting. They have the building inspector remote, our team remote, and then the building inspector would direct our people to walk around and focus on something, look at something. And it was amazing, actually. It was very sort of simple. You think about the technology, iPad, with Zoom or Teams. But what it enabled is just a new way of engagement. Building inspections usually are, they're sort of cumbersome. You have to schedule well ahead of time. They sometimes get canceled. You get delayed. Now we've established, in some areas, we've established just new ways of working that we hope actually outlast the pandemic. Now that we've established the trust, and I think that's the first hurdle. I think now we've got that I think we can look at extending that beyond just your basic, bootstrap tools of like an iPad or a team, and go into more of like an AR environment. I'm a big fan of AR. I think more so than VR, in the sense that it's by overlaying on your existing environment, you can really enhance and supplement the knowledge of the person that's using that headset. You can have remote training and learning from maybe a more experienced person seeing the same thing that person's. So I could see, again, where we went from sort of the sort of pedestrian or prosaic technologies, again, basic, but by establishing this new way of thinking and working and establishing trust, I think it then makes it that much easier to start to adopt more advanced technologies. Looking at, again, the HoloLens or the Oculus Rift or what have you. I think now where that might have been too big of a hurdle, I think we've we've plowed the path to get us there, and we're starting to see that. We're starting to see the use of again, an AR, VR, because again, people are just needing to find new ways of work.
Sure. Excellent. Thank you. Mark, building on that and sticking with kind of AR, VR, or extended reality, as Jim just talked about, can you share any specifics, maybe problems you've encountered that you were able to solve using this technology?
Yeah, I mean, look, we look at this in a couple of different ways, and I'm I wouldn't say I'm a science fiction nerd, but I'm a bit of a Neil Stephenson fan, and I always think about this metaverse that Neil Stephenson envisioned, 25 years ago. And we've all been trying to get there forever. We are at a point now where, and by the way, I agree with Jim. I think VR has its place, but it's still a really kind of high barrier to entry, right? Because there's not enough devices out there. And so to get to a critical mass of consumers and guests who are using that technology is going to take us a few years. But AR is, to me, kind of the current rock star, right? It allows us to really create this kind of combined hybrid world that can really create this amazing guest experience. And when I talk about guests, I mean, you know, whether they're tenants or whether they are actually guests to Area 15. And so I talk a lot about kind of the invisible and the visible technology. Invisible technology for us is all the stuff I talked about earlier, right? Like the kind of safety measures that we're using tech to defend our guests about from COVID. It's also all of the back office stuff that we all build every day, right? At Area 15, that's the network and the POSs and all that good stuff. But the visible technology is part of the experience. And at Area 15, it's all about experience, right? We created this black box that's basically, it can change and transform and be whatever we need it to be for the evening. And that includes AR. We have actually built this pretty extraordinary experience that's launching in the next couple of weeks that is effectively a free roaming AR art exhibit game kind of challenge. And there are these dynamic and beautiful triggers that are throughout the venue that were designed by Chris Wink, who's the co-founder of the Blue Man Group. And as a guest walks up to these triggers, holding this like crazy kind of, you know, post-punk modified welding helmet that wraps around their face and holds this iPhone Pro Max that acts as a viewfinder, but it's completely hidden, right? So the technology disappears to the guest and suspended disbelief becomes really possible. And as they approach a trigger, it comes to life. And we have a character named Haley who's part of the Area 15 backstory. And as they explore this entire like couple 100,000 square foot venue and discover these triggers, games are popping out. And they're from simple to complicated games. And as they play, Haley's telling them about the backstory of Area 15 and where they can go next and where they can find some hidden clues. As they as they win some of these games, they're collecting particles. And so it's this really cool gamified experience. And those particles, by the way, are tied to the invisible technology, which is our loyalty program. And we're writing in real time through this custom middleware that we developed to a whole bunch of our experiences and our back office systems. So literally in real time, guests are collecting particles that they can use to redeem at Area 15. That's just one example. We're using AR and VR throughout the venue, and I think, you know, as you think about this other side of the business, which for us a big part of our business is events. Events have been really challenging in a COVID world, right? So we had to think about how do we reinvent this portal or this venue to still be relevant in this COVID world. And we found that, by the way, there is still a demand for events. We're on one right now. At Area 15, we're really thinking about how do we create these exciting kind of hybrid events where some people are on site, some people are in a virtual world where they're literally exploring the event or the conference with their headset on. Others could be sitting at a computer, yet others on their iPhone. But we're going beyond Zoom. We're going beyond kind of, you know, postage size videos of people on the screen and really creating this environment where instead of having the thousands of people that could be physically in the venue at Area 15, we can have a hybrid event with 1 million people. We can do the same thing with our music venue that we're developing. And so AR and VR to me is no longer the future. It is what's enabling some of the crazy cool stuff that we're doing in Area 15. That has also like found its way into Fisher, and I think Ken talked about some of the crazy stuff we're doing at Fisher with AR, from architecture and planning in 3D and VR to these amazing AR experiences that will happen when you walk up and look at the wall of our and the artwork on our building. So I really like, I can't promote it enough. I really say to everyone who's listening today, think about how this technology can push you forward as a company and be creative, right? Like figure out really amazing, engaging use cases. And Jim made a good point, right? Like it's beyond the guest experience. you can create these like amazing kind of support and help type situations in healthcare, in real estate, in architecture. It's really going across kind of all industries and verticals right now.
Excellent. I mean, you're kind of making me want to book a plane ticket and
Well, I
simultaneously
hope I am, because you really should.
and simultaneously apologize to my kids for, you know, being on their devices all the time. I mean, maybe they have a vision. I don't know. But no, thank you for all that. Brian, let's go to you for just a second. You know, so we're talking about AR, VR. Obviously, it's been used a lot in kind of the visualization of architectural spaces and scale. But I know you spoke to kind of having a background in modular. So what are the possibilities for AR, VR in constructions and fabrication?
Yeah, great question. So yeah, it's like, you know, AR, VR, I've seen a lot of experiences in the architectural office, you know, roaming the hallways of shop and seeing how cool it is, and like, okay, how do we now make this cool, like you just said, for construction and fabrication. And, you know, it goes back to, and every time I say shop, I think I'm getting paid for that, so I'm getting some fees on that. But you know, back when we did Barclays Center in 2012, it was great because we used manufacturing-based software, and that really got us more like real-time looking at the components and things like that. So my world is always thinking, of course, of the parts and what the master assemblies become and things like that. But using the manufacturing software, you really got a view into like the exterior of the building. That's what we're working on with, and really being able to zoom in and be able to communicate to the field work, to the manufacturing work of the assembly through the use of that model. Now with the AR, VR tools that we have, you know, we go back further into the life cycle of that part. So it's a really great tool for what we're using right now is when we're developing components such as like fire protection or structural connections, is, you know, being able to communicate, you know, with our in-house engineers and the exterior engineers we're working with, is to like really zoom in on this and use VR to understand how these assemblies are coming together. You know, AR, another great use, you know, whether it's, you know, it's our own production facility or someone who's going to be, you know, owning the production facility for the work that we're doing right now. You know, it's been great to go visualize spaces right now with AR and look at our tooling. So, you know, we're developing a whole production line for this, and understanding how it fits in these different buildings and things like that has been a really great tool for us for the past couple of months that we've been using that with. But again, I see this is something that's going to develop into the assembly facilities. You know, it's going to be used for all training exercises. I mean, I've had experience in the Brooklyn factory of, you know, using just, you know, documentation and sitting there with the workers and trying to visualize what we're trying to do. But now you can take a step back, you can come into the classroom, you could, you know, visualize everything, immerse yourself in the VR, understand how these parts and pieces are going together, because everything's about process that we do. So there's always going to be, you know, instructions of how to do something. And now you could actually kind of, you know, get in there in the virtual world before you're actually handling the real parts. So, so it's going to be, you know, from the factory to the on-site work. It's just, I mean, this is just going to be an essential tool for us in terms of how to communicate all that instruction.
Excellent, thanks. And Nora, let's come back to you. I mean, you know, we're hearing a lot of great stuff, but specifically your perspective, you know, what's the best utilization of these technologies? And by contrast, you know, are there any limitations that you see?
Sure. So we spent a lot of time and are still spending a lot of time trying to figure out how to digitize or make virtual some of these more rudimentary experiences that we all go through in the construction industry. So similar to what Jim was saying, talking about inspectors being on site, talking about bid walkthroughs, talking about all these high touch experiences and in-person experiences that we're all very much used to in our world. So while I think VR glasses and immersive experiences are definitely where we're going to go, we kind of need to have a ramp up before we get there. So what we have seen really is an increased usage in 3D scanning. And I think we are going to continue to see that ramp up and also become more agile and more personal. We've participated in several virtual bid walkthroughs, so allowing companies who don't have to be on site an immersive experience and a dimensional experience within a space. And, you know, with the iPhone 12 Pro series coming out with LiDAR in the future, you know, we're going to be able to see that that capability put in the hands of everyone who's on a construction site.
Great. I do have to say we've tested LiDAR and I'm not that impressed yet, but it's going to get there.
It will get there, definitely. We are more impressed with a technology that Leica has come out with, which is visual inertia technology. So it kind of tracks where you're going, and you're able to get an accuracy of about a 1/16 of an inch up to 450-ish feet away. So I think that that technology, at least in the interim, is where we are. And I think personal LiDAR is hopefully going to come up to speed very soon.
Well, there's no question that when the Apple glasses come out, they will basically consume the entire AR market. No matter whether the technology is the best or not, but I am personally looking forward to them actually being released someday.
Excellent. Jim, let me come back to you. We'll start to segue to modular in a minute, but I want to get your take on, basically how you change company culture to embrace, the opportunities inherent in adapting some of these technologies. We got a little bit of the perspective from Ken in the opening keynote, from the Fisher Brothers perspective. What's your take?
My take is that it's hard. It's a lot of work. What I've learned long ago is, it's easy to sort of get frustrated with people, to imagine, you show up with this cool new thing that you're convinced, it's going to change their life, it's going to make everything better. And somebody looks at you and says, go away. I got to focus on what I'm doing. And they push you and push you away. And it's easy to get frustrated. So long ago, I had a bit of an epiphany, and which was that, it's recognizing that people are hardwired to do something the same way every day, because that's literally, the brains are built that way, to just get into a routine and do that thing well. And so any new thing, even if I'm convinced it's better, it's still going to be effort for somebody to retrain their brain, rethink about how they're doing things, to remember every day, hey, I want to use this new tool. It's different than the one I had yesterday, and I gotta remember that I click here, I click there, whatever it is. But it's not people's fault. It's just the way we're built. And so I realized, look, let's focus. So I always say that change comes one person at a time. And it's sort of figurative, but actually it's literal, in the sense that you can't write a memo and tell everybody just to change. You literally got to get down to people, and you got to work with individuals and say, look, here's this vision of this better place. You're gonna have to trust me a bit that it's going to be better. I know it's going to be extra work, but by the time you get over that hump of the extra work, it will generally be better for you afterwards. But trust me, there's a little bit of trust there. And so you look at, as an example, say like offsite. So offsite is so interesting because there's been a lot of interest in the company. We've actually done a fair amount of offsite work, whether it's the volumetric, large, blocks of chunks of apartments or hotels, and as well as multi-trade prefab, corridor racks or chase racks or something, and down to obviously single trade, but that's sort of more at the discretion of the individual trade. But we never really had I'd say a cohesive strategy. We didn't establish a vision. So, and to get the organization to start to focus on it, because there's a lot of stuff going on. Even now, we're in the midst of COVID. We're still working on this offsite construction initiative, for lack of a better word. We started with creating a little bit of urgency, the sense that, look, we've got to figure this out. There was certainly a belief that this is the future of construction. I mean, there's myself and others that are very passionate that literally this is the future of construction. And if you don't figure it out, we're going to be obsolete in 10 years. So we started with saying, look, we got to figure this out. We just created the urgency to create the momentum. We got down to people, individuals, started talking to them, saying, look, we got to move there. But we're still, it still takes time. We started a formal initiative out of my department probably 18 months ago. And I would have loved to move faster, but you know what? It's just, you got to work two angles. You got to work the leadership, and then you got to work the grassroots. You got to bring them together. It just takes time. It just takes time. It is, people move at the pace they want to move at. You can't make them go any faster. But for us, we tend to sort of go slow to go fast. So we're in the midst of this initiative. We put some people in place. The first thing was to capture all the knowledge around offsite, all the stories, do interviews, lots of interviews, to pull stuff out of people's heads, capture that, make it available to the company. Next step right now is we're hiring officially an offsite director to head up this whole, again, I hate to call it an initiative, but for lack of a better word, this initiative. So in fact, if anybody's interested in the position, you can apply now. So that was to you, Brian. So we're looking for a person to head up this whole effort, because we really, again, want to put people in place and very carefully and thoughtfully try to develop that strategy, because we've seen other companies jump too quick, we think, into buying a facility or investing in something. We're not sure that's the answer. I don't want to say I know the answer right now, but I know it's probably not as simplistic as that. I think we're going to explore the whole value chain, see if there are opportunities along that value chain. But so in this case with offsite, we're not going to be that first mover. I don't think I don't think there is a first mover advantage. I could argue it's a disadvantage. I think we're going to be that fast follower. Is probably what we're going to end up being. Try to learn from, let everybody else make mistakes and learn from them. But we're committed. So for offsite, again, we're moving the whole organization, and we're to a better place, and educating, raising awareness, putting resources in place, trying to make a difference on our projects. And then if we do it right, it becomes a pull, not a push. People will want it. They'll want to bring, we're trying to put people in place as a service actually to projects. So people will want that person to come in and help them figure out, are there opportunities for, again, say converting to designing it as a volumetric or multi-tree preview. And we want people to pull. When we get that pull, that's when I know we're successful in changing the organization.
Excellent, thanks. Let's continue to pivot a little bit to modular, just talk a touch about that. And Brian, I'm going to look to you first while we can tap into your brain before you apply for Jim's position. You started scratching the surface of this.
I'll be working for him soon enough. Don't worry. Oh, my COO is not on right now.
So from your perspective, you started scratching the surface of this, but talk about how AR, VR, and modular complement one another.
Yeah, Jim, that was just great. Everything you just said, how to start this. And again, I love every day the position I'm in right now of, like I said, like the startup. And we've been tackling this for almost just about 2 years right now and developing what this is going to be. And, it's technology based first. And then how do we stream down from that, and how do we pull everyone in from from the designers to the supply chain, to the builders, to the fabricators, and it's again building that whole network. And everything I'm sure people have been to other conferences and you see the way it always comes up in the presentations, like how the car is built, how the plane is built. And yeah, that's the motivation behind this. How do we take the building, like everything is something that you can buy, you can manufacture, things have adjacencies, they click together, and we're trying to pull that together. And it is another term that pops up, like digital platform and what that is. And everything that we do is we use right now the 3D experience. It's CATIA based. That's just a tool in the arsenal, right? And that's again complements with the AR, VR. So if we kind of build everything within this platform, it gives us a way of communicating with the designers. So out of that, we're able to produce our kit of parts. So we can now talk to the architects and the engineers that this is the part of the system, and here's how it works together. And then you can design with that, and you engineer with that too. So that's all built in the system. Same thing from that same model is exported out to suppliers across the network. So how do you pull out this piece right now and present it to someone and say, hey, this is the component that I need. How are you going to go about creating it? Again, the model that comes out of the platform, it gets inserted into these other notions of like the VR that we use. If drawings are necessary, sure, we can output those drawings from it as well. But it's always that common like master model thread that goes through the whole process. But again, I think it's an exciting place for us to be right now with what we're trying to do. And it's the DNA that a lot of us, half the team has been working with for I think the last 10 years on this right now. We have mechanical engineers, manufacturing engineers on board, not the mechanical engineer like Nor, all that, but the other type of mechanical engineer that exists. it's a really diverse group that we have here, and we're getting excited for, I think, really 2021 to see how we can now apply this to actual projects, and how this workflow that we've been kind of creating for the last 2 years is going to pan out. But so anyway, it's about the platform for us. That's what it is. Yeah.
Thanks. And Nora, but what about you? Some of your experiences and maybe your perspectives on the biggest challenges regarding the adoption of modular workflows.
Sure. So I'm really excited where modular is going now, and I think time and speed from concept to mod is going to be key. What we've seen in the past is one of the biggest challenges are decision making, particularly when it comes to technology within a space and that user experience technology, because people are afraid to commit until they know that they're going to be getting most likely the latest and greatest within their built environment. And so to be able to decrease that time so that people are more comfortable with what is actually going to go in that space, what that technology is going to be, I think we're going to see an increase in modular as a result of that. Prior from concept to build, when it would take years, people were reluctant to invest because they didn't know what was going to be coming down the pike in regard to technology. But now, as we're going to be able to shorten that time span, we're going to see it accelerate.
Okay, great. So we're going just under 15 minutes left, and there's a few questions I want to get to. So I'm going to pivot a little bit. Mark, I'm going to come to you. I want to talk a little bit about data. We've been hearing about, data, and term big data was there, and data analytics is there. And, I'm thinking about Area 15. So how does data and data collection factor into an experiential venue like Area 15?
Yeah, so I'm like a 25-year plus software technology guy. And I would say before Area 15, all of my experience was digital, right? Everything was the web. Everything was, how do we collect every single bit of information that we can and figure out how we leverage that moving forward and how we glue it together. So when I came to Area 15, first of all, we have a leadership team that just believes 100% in the value of data. And there is a giant step that has to be taken between having a ton of data and having insights that are valuable that you can actually drive the business with. So look, we kind of took a couple of approaches. The first was, and by the way, I'll even go back to modular just for a half second. Like, I have lived in the modular world my entire career, right? When you think about software and networks and infrastructures, it's 100% modular, right? It's all these discrete chunks that you can reuse and recycle, that you can plug in, and that you can plug something else in if that doesn't work. And that was really the approach that we took, both from a physical structure at Area 15, as well as a technology infrastructure. And I digress on this for a second, because as we started looking at what a full holistic technical architecture needed to look like at Area 15, we knew that we wanted to be cloud first. We knew that we wanted to plug in best of breed solutions so we didn't have to reinvent the wheel in a number of ways, whether that's ticketing or POS or Wi-Fi or loyalty, or like all of these different pieces. But we knew that all of these systems had to talk together in real time, and they had to share data. And we also knew that there had to be a way for us to pull all of the data from all of the source systems into our own data warehouse and associate it with each other through some sort of unique identifier. So we can basically, whether you're on Square or a ticketing platform or a Wi-Fi or scanning a QR code, you're all associated with this single identity within Area 15. I will also go as far as saying that I did not do a single contract with a vendor at Area 15 for more than 1 year. And that's because we were literally thinking of everything as being modular. So if I pulled in a vendor and it didn't work and we knew that there was improvement, they're out, and we can plug in another solution in a couple of days versus months. And that's because we thought about a modular architecture. So for us, the goal was, okay, now we've got all this data. How do we actually make it valuable to our business leaders? That is the hardest part, right? So, I always take the approach that I share small bits of data to start, especially with teams that aren't used to using it to drive business decisions. And then it gets their brains kind of thinking, right? We talk about the change management that Jim was talking about. Like, I introduce it small, and then they start telling us what else they want, right? And so that helps create kind of a data roadmap for us, and our data team can start pulling in the things and adding them to dashboards and reports. But we also want to teach our business owners to fish, right? We don't want to have to generate a report for everything. So we've actually gone with a very explore heavy type interface where, yes, you can create dashboards, but most important is this really simple mechanism for any business owner to actually explore the data across all of the different data sources. So they can run a visual query in a couple of minutes that pulls data from 13, 15, 20 different data sources, but they have no idea because it's this one aggregated data source that they're pulling from. So for us, it was really important that we treated this physical venue as a digital entity, meaning we wanted all the capabilities that we would have building a website or a mobile app, and the data collection mechanisms that you have and the insights that are possible, and the dynamic ability to create real-time couponing and offers and messaging to your guests. We want that same experience in the venue, both in the back office and our understanding and consumption of the data, and from the guest experience, so that they can really leverage and get value from this data that we're collecting. And I can give you one use case that we're going to be implementing. So we've got these smart AI-powered security cameras. I can watch a specific area of the venue. I can see how many people are hanging out. In real time, I can pull data from our ticketing system. I can know whether or not out of the 30 people that are standing there, we've converted 5. I can provide a real-time offer from our POS or our ticketing system that's going to publish to the mobile app that the user's actually hanging out with in venue, using to experience our venue. And in real time, they'll get a push notification with an offer, like, buy this experience and we'll give you a discount on Birdly. And so it's this real-time, fun, engaging type experience where we're fully leveraging the data to do that. And if we didn't have the systems, if we didn't think about this from day one, it would be impossible. But anyway,
No,
data's look, man, data's step one for us. But the real goal is data that you can do stuff with.
I think that feeds into a question I wanted to ask Jim, kind of looking to the future, and talking about, what you can do stuff with. What other emerging technologies do you think are poised to transform construction?
I'll tell you, and actually along the lines of data, I'd say I put at the top of my list artificial intelligence. I think, and there's flavor, there's a spectrum, I guess you should say. The artificial intelligence is more, especially when you're talking like the deep learning. I mean, that's a time horizon that's a long ways away. Machine learning is a little closer to us. We're actually starting on one end with just business intelligence and analytics. Because what we've realized is to take advantage of machine learning AI, you have to get your data in some organized fashion, cleaned up a bit. I mean, half the effort, more than half, 70% of the effort of leveraging the data it comes from just cleaning it up. So in fact, we hired for the first time ever a couple AI interns. It sounded glamorous, but they ended up just cleaning up all our data in our different systems, and they never came back. But the idea is, we want to move towards that world where you can leverage the data, you can start to get into predictive analytics, and then some future distant world, more AI, where it's the AI is being trained by knowledgeable experts, and we can sort of capture that and it can be leveraged. So I'd say AI, I'd say Internet of Things is probably next on the list. I think is impactful. I think it hasn't had its day yet. It's it's closer. Whether it's RFID tags or what have you are getting cheaper. You still got a decent amount of infrastructure. With IoT, we're still trying to figure out exactly what things are worth tracking. on a, say, a construction site. But I think there's an opportunity there because we need, what the COVID has shown us is that we need visibility into our supply chain. When it gets disrupted, we want to be able to be agile. And I think IoT has there's an opportunity. I think robotics and slash automation would probably be next. I think we've actually just leased a couple months ago the Boston Dynamics Spot robot. It's pretty cool actually. We're testing it on job sites right now. It's pretty amazing actually. But we're more testing the robot for around, because we're interested more in its payload. It's not so much a robot as much as what can it carry and what can we get from that. So robotics, I think. And the last thing I do is actually an interesting is 5G. I actually think 5G when we really truly have 5G coverage and coverage that extends even into the buildings. I think that's going to be a game changer because most innovations require there's a lot of parts and pieces and an infrastructure required to really unlock the value of an innovation. And we need connectivity and better connectivity to start to again be doing real time, doing AR and machine learning. You need that infrastructure. So I actually think 5G is a big one we're keeping track of.
Okay, thanks. So we're under 5 minutes. I want to ask a couple more questions and maybe look to the chat box. So maybe if we could do like 60 seconds or less on these, just to get it in as much as possible. Nora, talk about user experience. Kind of what are the expectations of user experience in a commercial environment, mid-pandemic and post-pandemic, and how do they need to change?
Sure. So I think we are going to be seeing a lot of touchless experiences come to the commercial environment. We want to be able to get people from the street to their seat without having to touch anything. That is going to actually kind of playing into one of the questions that came in, that is going to impact how lobbies are addressed, how we use turnstiles. I think there's going to be a big upset in vertical transportation. People are not necessarily going to want to be touching elevator buttons. So I think biometrics are gonna, touchless biometrics are gonna play a lot into the role of the future commercial environment.
Excellent, thank you. And that did kind of tap into the question that came to the chat box. So thank you. So if anyone else has any perspectives, the question just for the audience's sake is are you seeing an increase in adding turnstiles in building lobbies to help direct, screen, and control the amounts of people entering a facility? So I know Nora just spoke to it. Does anybody else have a take on that?
Okay. I mean, I can tell you that at Fisher, we're certainly focused on as much of a touchless experience as we can, and where touch is required, we're going to coat that stuff in microbacterial kind of coatings, right? But I think, look, from a commercial building perspective, look to apps, look to Bluetooth, right? Like a guest should be able to walk in the building, have their temperature scanned, not have to touch anything, not have to stand, a foot away from someone with a handheld thermometer, but use, high-end thermal cameras. They should be able to walk up to a turnstile and via Bluetooth with their access application, gain access into the building. The elevators should be 100% smart, right? Like recognize the same app, get the same Bluetooth signal, know exactly what floor they're going to. Nothing has to be touched, right? And Nora's right. Get them to their seat without having to touch anything. And then make sure it's a safe environment, right? Like, from our perspective, that means UV filters in our hair handling, right? I mean, it's like we're going to crazy extent to make sure that our tenants are safe when they come back to our buildings at Fisher.
Great. Brian, if we take a step back for a second, what are the larger trends that you are seeing that these technologies are really just helping us tap into?
Yeah, I think, I think the key word I just want to say is transparency. With modular construction, what we're trying to do, and I think a lot of the technologies are help with that. I mean, that's our biggest thing right now. I mean, when I talk to developers, it's always about with modular, it's like cost certainty, schedule certainty. Like these are the things that modular is the promise, and like that's. I mean, I value all those in what we do, and I think the information that we're pulling out of the platform, it's how you provide that data tracking, how do you provide that window so that all the stakeholders involved are seeing into that. I mean, these are things we started earlier. Sometimes I got into trouble where it was too much information for a person to see, but I mean, this is this is what we're offering. This is part of our delivery of allowing everyone access and see it. You know, it's the Instagram, Facebook, you know every minute what's happening with somebody, and that's what we're trying to do. You know, I see another world like with metrology as well, which is really key into the modular aspect. So how the pieces are fitting together as the building goes up, you know that your accuracy is maintained. So I think metrology is another key piece in that. So there's a lot of great devices and equipment out there right now. So I think that's one area that we'll be kind of pushing a little further, you know, what we could do with that. And yeah, so I think, yeah, in terms of like, you know, data, you know, visualizing the data part of it and metrology are two big places that we'll be pushing. So for sure.
Great, thank you. So guys, I'm looking at the time, and I just want to be respectful of the overall program agenda. So I think we're going to cut it there, just because I know that the other panels, you know, it's going to cascade if we run long. I do know there were a few more topics we were going to get to. I know there were a few questions in the chat box, so I would encourage the panelists maybe to just reach out and select who you want to connect to, and maybe I'm sure the panelists would be more than happy to address those questions and connect with you offline. But for now, I mean, I've had fun doing this, so I really appreciate everybody's time. Thank you to the panelists. And back to you, Commercial Observer.
Thanks, Justin.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Justin. That was a great panel. Very futuristic, future looking. I liked it. I'd now like to introduce our second panel of the day, Designing Advanced Facilities in the Age of IT, AI, and Building Innovation, moderated by Gabriel Paskera, Director, Smart Buildings, Jbmb, with panelists Pete Coleman, Smart Workplace Strategy and Design Principal, PTS, Alexis McGuffin, Director of Virtual Design and Construction at Lend-Lease, and Dale Tuttle, a partner at Witham. All right, take it away.
All right, thank you for having us. So first off, again, I'm Gab Paskera, Director of Smart Buildings for Jbmb. We definitely have more of a consulting and design-oriented panel. So with that, I want to let Pete, Dale, Alexis, maybe let's kick off with Alexis, just a little bit about where your focus is, so everybody kind of understands where each of us is coming from.
Sure. Thanks, Gabe. Good morning. Thank you to the Commercial Observer for having me on the panel today. I'm Alexis McGuffin. I've worked for Lend-Lease for 15 years, most of which has been in a technical role leading the virtual design and construction team. So Lend-Lease is a globally integrated real estate investment group. The Americas region, we're headquartered here in New York, and we offer core capabilities in property and communities development, construction, investment management, and infrastructure development. Our expertise cover many sectors, but just to highlight a few for today, that would include residential, commercial, healthcare, life sciences, higher ed, mixed use, affordable housing, and urban regen. So while we are an integrated group, a lot of my questions might be kind of have a more of a construction skew today.
Thanks. Pete, you want to jump in?
Yeah, g'day everyone. Pete Coleman. I work for PTS, that's People Technology Space, based in New York. I recently moved over here from Sydney, Australia, and I head up the Smart Workplace Strategy and Design team. We do a lot of work in the commercial spaces, helping clients utilize technology. So we only focus on technology. We don't do any other building services. So it's just solely tech, and all aspects of the workplace are touched by technology these days. So we work with a lot of clients, not just doing the designs, but also doing the strategy. So like some large social media platforms, we're working with them to understand how technology can assist them with their future workplaces around the world.
I guess that's my turn. Dale Tuttle, I'm with them, that's a mouthful, on the tech advisory side. So our team, we're essentially tech consultants, and my particular focus, which I think is relatively germane to what we're talking about today, is usually data and automation. Those are the two practices within the tech advisory that I lead and participated last year, and happy to be here this year. Thank you.
Awesome. Again, I'm Gab Paskera, Director of Smart Buildings for Jbmb. So bringing new technologies and helping them interface with more traditional infrastructure, getting systems to talk. That's where my focus is. But we're going to mostly be pulling from the panel here. So with that, I want to start off with something that hopefully also gets our attendees thinking about what excites them. So for our panelists, and I want to start with Dale and then go to Alexis, just speaking to what technologies are really ones that you're most excited about right now. So fairly open-ended.
Yeah, it is, but especially in the context of the subject matter today, what are we seeing is really what I guess I'm interested in. It's paralleling a lot what I just heard from the other panel. It's the collection of data and making decisions on data. Now that can be anywhere in the process, right? The actual building, and it can be once the building is up and it's has people in it and things happening. There are data all over the place. And in fact, last year, a big topic was how data are really not being used. I heard the earlier panel also talk about that. I'm definitely seeing more use of data, but it's still an area that can be further mined, so to speak. But then automating processes in whatever part of the process we're talking about, right? Wherever data are concerned and data need to be decided upon, the automated movement of data and workflows and that stuff is actually getting very, very popular. And it's and then of course I'd be remiss by not even by talking about the security around the data and our ability to do things more with data, secure it, but then make better decisions with it in whatever part of the life cycle we're talking about.
Great. And just a specific question on that for the data side, because I know I've heard the same, just getting people to store it is a big step. Have you seen any instances of sort of novel usage that maybe we didn't see, previously in years past, but has come up in projects, buildings you're involved with?
Well, it's for me, we're just seeing an awareness. I think the first thing is awareness, but especially now it's around health data. It could be health data around anything, right? Your workers, the building process, residents, and so the collection, storage, analysis, and reporting on health data actually is something we're seeing a lot of, and that really cuts across our our industries. But health data, that's the biggie.
Gotcha. Alexis?
Sure. So one of them would be digital twins. Designed for manufacture and assembly, not really previously thought possible in the AEC industry, is becoming a reality, and AI and machine learning are making that possible. So digital twins of our projects and assets can help our projects by accelerating automation, design, fabrication, construction processes, and they can serve as the backbone for prefab and a means of achieving that industrialized efficiency that we all kind of hope and dream of. Also, gamification of design and construction. So I just saw an article recently that Epic Games is pledging $100 million to support finding new utilization for Unreal Engine. So I'm excited to see that effect in our industry. Visualization, it's always been key, right? It's really important. It's an important component of making better, faster decisions along with that data that everybody's talking about. And it'll help us move towards site assembly instead of a site construction process, which has kind of tons of benefits in terms of safety, efficiency, speed. And then robotics. So we were seeing a labor shortage before COVID. And I think that was driving a lot of the robotic discussion and development. But now it's kind of on the opposite end. We're trying to figure out how to social distance on site to keep everyone safe. And for those tasks that require multiple people working in close proximity, what if one of those could be a robot? And we'll be able to keep working safely through another pandemic without having any stoppages. So those are, without trying to repeat the earlier panel, those are some of the things that, we're definitely excited about here.
Great. Looks like I'm frozen. Can y'all still hear me? Yeah.
I can, no, we can see you too.
Okay. So I'm very curious. I want to get back to data because that really touches on what Dale was talking about. And I think there's an interface between construction and then operation. But on the manufacturing side, Because I know we've been talking about, you know, modular and standardization, prefab for a long time. Is there any sort of low-hanging fruit that you've seen really come to reality, whether it's pods or bathrooms or what in that space?
That for Pete?
Who's that question? Who's that question?
For Alexis.
Oh,
You had mentioned how design and construction has finally started to kind of go to manufacturing and assembly.
okay.
Doing
Yeah, I mean, you know, definitely the pods. I mean, we're seeing a lot of, you know, uptick in modular components in our pharmaceutical, life science, healthcare projects. You know, overhead and head walls and that type of thing. Obviously, bathrooms. In our residential business, you know, we're looking at, you know, just kind of developing kit of parts type of, you know, design approaches with obviously kitchen, bathrooms, and unit types. You know, and then also just for on the construction side, you know, we've been able to create a modularized, what we call like a health and wellness pod, right? That we can just kind of put out on the sites, and it really ups the worker welfare, you know, approach that we like to bring to all of our sites. So it's got, you know, it's plumbed, it's got heating, cooling, you know, it's private bathroom space, and those can just be, you know, those are modular. They can be picked up by a crane and placed all over the site. So, I mean, that would be, you know, my first kind of pass at what's already kind of standard and the low hanging fruit.
Great. Pete, what's got you excited?
The thing that gets me the most excited is voice. I mean, there's just in the US alone, there's 90 million smart speakers installed. That doesn't include the integrated systems like Siri and Cortana and things like that. So it's only a matter of time, I believe, before voice works its way into the workplace. And especially now, like with COVID, and we're after a touchless and a touchless environment, we feel comfortable enough to use it at home. So, you know, why aren't we using it in the workplace? So that's probably got me the most excited, along with analytical sensors. So these sensors are getting a lot smarter these days. So not only can they do people counting, but they're also able to detect if someone is sitting or standing or the task that they're performing, so we can better understand how the workplace is actually being utilized. So, I mean, you know, you see these offices deck out their workplace with sit-stand desks. How many people are actually using them? How often is a space being used? Those kinds of things. So this sort of feeds back into that data conversation that we're having earlier. But I mean, we've got to be able to collect the data and collect the right data in the first place. And so voice and analytical sensors are the two things that I think will be amazing. Amazon just released a product called Amazon Halo, and what it is, it's actually it's like a sports band, and it measures a lot of health qualities. But the thing that it does measure that I'm most excited about is tone of voice. So what I'm thinking about, how could that then be used in a workplace to measure the tone of voice of the workplace, to detect whether, you know, the employees or the people in the workplace are disgruntled, if they're happy. And so you could potentially detect a problem before it actually arises. So I know it sounds all very big brother, but I mean, you know, it's just the reality that the world we're living in these days, really.
Right, convenience versus privacy.
Correct.
On the sensing side, the Amazon product sounds a little bit like Humanize, which was looking at workplace interactions. But within the context of everything you just described, you know, I know voice might apply to this, but have you seen actual adoption that's been accelerated by the pandemic?
Not at this stage. I mean, we're only seeing, you know, various reports about 15% of the workplaces actually come back to the office. So no, a lot of the technology that is being deployed is more building related, like landlord related rather than tenant related. The discussions that we're having with our clients revolve not so much around voice, but around the sensors to keep people separated. So like to be able to, if they can book desks, then they could only book every second seat. Or if someone has used a desk that day, then it can't be rebooked until it's cleaned, and those kinds of things. So it's more the analytical sensors we're seeing interest in it at the moment. Hopefully that then does transfer over to the voice conversation once we sort of get over this hurdle.
Got it. So not so much the first stuff you talked about, but more so contact tracing, proximity, and utilization.
Correct. Yeah.
So along the same lines, Dale, for the things that you're interested in or in general, what have you seen the pandemic actually accelerate adoption or change adoption?
Yeah, it's a good one. So I actually think it's planning for return to work. We have manufacturing clients that are interested in doing a better job, because a lot of these places are back to some degree. And what happens, they had a plan to come back, and then they do it, and then they're finding out X, Y, or Z hasn't worked, so they want to do it better. So what I'm seeing now is an interest in some apps that help you plan for the return to work. And Pete was just talking about spacing, reporting on who used what space, and then so you can then execute some sort of cleaning. So we're actually getting direct interest in these apps. Now the good news is that most of the larger software vendors, we do a lot of Microsoft work, but Microsoft has released some back to work tools that if you're an Office 365 user, you can essentially tailor them for you, integrate them into your Office 365 environment. It helps you plan for people coming back, monitoring health, and then actually doing something like contact tracing that you just mentioned. So these apps are all pre-built. We're seeing a lot of interest in that, which surprised me a little bit because I thought that more people were back, but it turns out they're back in a very limited fashion, and they haven't really planned for bringing everyone back and planning for it effectively.
That's an interesting trend, though. Microsoft jumping in workplace more, right? They offer so many business tools, but then related more to the physical realm, we haven't seen them so much in our world.
Yeah, and it's I think at least what I'm seeing is really focused on the physical, what to do with your frontline workers, what to do with your tenants, and provide a means of dealing with the health crisis. And like most things, they're often not first, but once they decide to do something, once the ship gets turned and starts heading in that direction, innovation starts to happen.
So Alexis, for the technologies you're interested in the most, what have you seen the pandemic sort of accelerate that's been interesting?
Sure. So I think the biggest one for us is reality capture. Been using reality capture techniques for years, 360 photo tours, laser scanning. We also do scan to mesh conversion in-house. But during peak lockdown, that was crucial, right? We were brought in early to help design teams keep moving, so we could deploy one person with a scanner or a camera or both out to site when the sites were closed, and capture everything and bring it back to the Zoom meetings, right? Whether it was existing conditions or current installation, capture, record that data, where we were actually on site when we got shut down, help things move along, provide scans and meshes to integrate with Revit models for design teams, keep them moving. So huge uptake in that. And then also VR, not new, but VR mockups, especially when site access is limited or no one can go to a showroom to look at a new unit. We can load up a simulation on the new wireless headsets. We can ship it to a site, a client, an investor. We can also do kind of what we call like VR simplified, where we're doing 360 renders of the spaces. Right, and then we can, we can share that over the web, and people can make decisions on finishes or walk a unit, and just improve the communication during a time when no one can really go anywhere. And again, right, it's like Zoom. It's stuff we've all had, but for years, but now we really need it, and so we're using it at its max.
For reality capture, capturing existing conditions in buildings or on construction sites. Has the technology progressed in the last year such that there's less sort of post-processing required to clean up, okay, this is exactly where that pipe is and so forth. I think of it a little bit because I know, Google Meet got a lot better during the pandemic, it seems. So I don't know if technology companies involved in that space, either during the pandemic or before or earlier in 2019, have made significant steps to make that technology easier and more productive.
Yes, in the last 2 years, it's come a long way. I mean, the hardware has come a long way, from these big, 6-figure machines to these really small, light units that, you can just use an iPad or your phone. They have, there's the software now has capability to kind of automatically register the scans. And also the handhelds, right? So something that we've been doing a lot of testing and piloting on are the handheld technology. Those have come a long way, right? Usually if it's smaller and you can walk fast, you don't capture as much data, it's not really usable, versus, like these big kind of clunky or slow, like individual setups. So the hardware's come a long way. And, we've been doing a lot of R&D and trying to work and collaborate with some interesting tech startups where they can do BIM model to point cloud, an analysis and tell you where your model's off, and be able to turn that around fast enough so that your superintendents on site can go out and actually catch that issue before it gets kind of locked in behind a wall or ceiling. So we've seen a lot of investment in this area. A huge, it was kind of like slowly building, and then like a huge increase in efficiency in both the hardware and the software. So it's something I could talk about for a while. I'm really excited about it. And like I said, it's a huge area for us, specifically for our own R&D and kind of partnering with these small startups, because, one of my big things too is there's been a huge flood of, capital and startups in our industry with smart people trying to solve our problems, but they don't know how to build, right? So we have to develop that back and forth communication to make sure that we shape the technology they're developing to meet our needs, instead of them just kind of handing us a product that doesn't quite meet our needs. So that's something we focus on a lot, is kind of those partnerships and making sure that that communication is flowing as it should.
I'm curious, because Alexis is more on the construction side, and then Dale and Pete, you're more operationally focused and occupant experience focused. There's a handoff between the two. And so Alexis is generating more data and has these awesome 3D models. But what are you seeing in terms of handoff? Are there software tools that are now being used by operations folks that first get set up during construction? I'm thinking something like Willow. Are you seeing more of that in the last year? And I guess, I'll start with Alexis because this is more her topic. So what are you handing off to operations? Is that more established?
It's a good question. I love, to make sure we continue to talk about this in the industry, because I think a lot of our institutional clients and our tech clients are very interested in this. They've already begun their kind of BIM to FM journey. And it takes a lot of thought and planning and investment on the client side, on the owner side. So, we're here to be helpful and to be a consultant and to deliver whatever data you need. We just need a little bit of help, or we need the clients to kind of get further on their journey in terms of what they do need, right? You can't deliver all the data because it will become a bear. It won't be very useful. And, I think a lot of the institutions are trying to figure out, like, what is that sweet spot of data that they need, right? It's not too much, it's not too little, and it will, as things progress, it will still serve their future needs. And what are those future needs? So, we've delivered everything from, what I would consider like the Cadillac, which is, fully integrated with Maximo, Revit models that have an extensive amount of COBie formatted data to a client. And they have built up a team of people who can actually use the models, update the data, keep it managed. And then we've delivered lighter things to kind of whet the client's appetites, more of a as-built, Navisworks federated model with some data linked to it to try to get them to think about it and where they want to go with it. But I don't know that anybody has it completely figured out, and maybe the other panelists will prove me wrong on that. But what we're seeing is kind of a varying degree of sophistication.
I guess Dale, Pete, this I don't know how much this comes up in your work, but what are you seeing in terms of data you get from the construction side, BIM models, or even what you would like to see? And if the answer is you're not really seeing much, that's okay too.
Yeah, so unfortunately, we're not receiving or seeing any data coming through. I mean, we are seeing some gradual improvements on certain projects. What we are seeing more of is on the operations side of, for the client. So we're seeing software platforms that are being put in place, something like PlaceOS, switch automation, that talk to all these disparate systems throughout the workplace and collect all that data. One of the projects we're working on in New York, the client has built a data lake over in Europe, and we're collecting all the information. We're talking to everything we can possibly talk to, whether it's visitor registration, lighting control, blind control, AV, you name it. If there's an interface there, we're talking to it, and we're collecting that data, aggregating the data, we're analyzing the data, and then we're able to actually display that and use that in a useful way, so the client can actually plan better, what rooms are being used. I mean, whilst a lot of these systems are, they're all siloed systems, but they all tend to be turnkey. Having this software layer that talks to all those and brings all this into one provides real useful information, because the client doesn't want to have 27 dashboards that they need to look at and try and make decisions on. That data needs to come together in some form. So that's why that software layer is so important in the workplace.
Yeah, and just to add to what Pete said, for us, it's what problem do the customers want to solve, right? That you have to always start there. What do you want to know? And once you decide what that really is, then you have to build the infrastructure to do that. So, Pete just gave a great example. To enable all that analysis, if you will, is to have an infrastructure to receive and then analyze data. So what we're seeing is they're asking us right now. We have just tons of interest in building better data platforms. And honestly, it's nuts and bolts stuff. It's mostly around financial stuff, right? This cuts across industries, but includes construction, our construction niche. People just want better financial analysis, predictive models. That there's a lot of interest in that. And finally, we're getting enough, it's getting easy enough to set up the infrastructure to collect it from the various systems and very quickly stream it into a data warehouse for analysis. That it's becoming honestly cheaper and faster, and all those great buzzwords that we hear. So that's the first thing. But the second thing, again, it's nuts and bolts in the construction industry in particular, automation. And the biggest thing right now that we have going on is the automation of estimation. So we have large companies who are still doing their estimating for whatever project, right? We have one that's a huge concrete construction firm in the DC metro area. They still do it by hand. So we built an estimation tool for them. So all the stakeholders, all the people that, as you build up an estimate and it has to go through the various layers of approval, instead of sending a spreadsheet around, emailing it and getting it out of sync, we built a automated workflow to do that. And so again, there's lots of interesting things going on with health data and the VR and stuff like that, but I often reflect on, it's the nuts and bolts stuff people still need. Better financial visibility, how's the manufacturing process going? Can I forecast what's going to happen next quarter? That sort of nuts and bolts stuff is still really, really important.
Gotcha. Just a public service announcement. Please add your questions to the Q&A. We will stop before 10:50 to also take questions. On the subject of data warehousing, Alexis mentioned there is no one solution to really take you from construction to facility management seamlessly, or no one's got it all figured out. on the data warehousing side, I've seen custom built and I've seen some more out of the box solutions. Pete, you had mentioned, working with one client who built, it sounds like they built their own data lake.
Yeah, they engaged an organization to build it on their behalf, but they have their own data lake, and they've already rolled out analytical sensors in their European offices, and they wanted to, they've actually even set up an innovation fund to actually accelerate this internally. So as I said, they're rolling out sensors throughout the European offices, and because this is a brand new office about to come online in New York, they're doing the same there. So they're always trying to get better data, better metrics to be able to design a better workplace.
And Pete, you said something earlier too. You're right. What's happening is the siloing of data is still a huge problem.
It is. It's massive. Yeah.
And it's getting worse because all these tools, all these sensors, the robots, Alexis was talking about on the manufacturing side, they're all collecting tons of data, but you have to synthesize it and do something with it. And honestly, we've been talking about this for 25 years, and it's it's better, it's easier to solve the problem, but it's still a huge problem.
Yeah, totally agree. And that's what I'm saying. That's why that a software layer that sits in between all of those and is able to collect it all is so vital, because everyone is building a turnkey solution because they're just going, oh, look at our sensors, roll them out. Here's the app for that, and lighting control. They're all doing the same thing. But like I said, no one wants 27 different apps, and the information is in 27 different locations. That's not helping anyone.
Right.
Alexis, I know you had mentioned robotics. Dale mentioned also automation is a big trend in construction. Whether it's robotics or other forms of automation, what can you dig in a little bit more there?
Sure. What's your specific question though?
So for robotics, we've seen, you'd mentioned that there's been maybe more adoption in the last year or two. So whether you want to talk a little bit more about that and what are the trends there, or other forms of automation in construction.
Sure. So I guess with the robots, right? So we've been seeing some interesting applications of robots coming and doing your layout or interior work and whatnot. And I think people are still struggling a little bit about that, which is why I brought up the pandemic portion, right? Because I think before it was a labor shortage issue, and they were, these robots are extremely expensive. There's like one that, is a masonry labor robot and whatnot, and they're really expensive. And I think, if we can, find this new application for this in terms of helping our sites with that, I think that I think there'll be more applications for that, I guess, in the future. And then automation, when we, one of our biggest hurdles, or I think one of the industry's issues, is like the time it takes to design projects, right? And so if we can get into some of the automation in terms of generative design, right, and kind of help us flush through a lot of the different options with design to spend our actual human resources on the bigger problems, right, and being more creative, and we can free up our people to be creative instead of doing kind of a lot of the repetitive work. I think that's something that we're looking at specifically, and I think that would actually help our industries, in a really significant way. I hope I answered your question.
Yes.
And Gabriel, it's what's interesting to me is what do we mean by robotics? Like, in the manufacturing side, we're thinking about these expensive actual machines that are doing stuff that a human used to do, or augmenting a human doing something. Actually, in my world, a robot is a software bot, right? It's the software doing something that a human did. So, and actually, it's a way overused term, but it's robotic process automation. It's it's automation based on a robot essentially mimicking a human doing something. Really, it's Excel macros on steroids. But that's a big buzzword now, and moving data between silos is what RPA was built for two systems that don't necessarily talk to each other. Instead of building an API layer, the machine just watches a human, whatever they do, then it'll do it the next time and do it just a lot faster. So what we mean by robotics, it really depends on your frame of reference.
Yeah, from the design side, I mean, we're already seeing software like X10AV. They call it artificial intelligence software. I'd probably classify it as more automated software, but it does cut down the time that it takes to design these systems. I mean, to draw a schematic, to do a cable schedule, to do all of that, it's basically, you pick products from a list and you start to build it from there. So, and that's just software that's available right now. It's not terribly expensive. So it's only a matter of time before that kind of software is then makes its way into all aspects of the design.
I think before we jump to, we've got one question already, but before we jump to that, you guys are on the front lines. What are the biggest hurdles? I know you want to see a lot of these technologies adopted. So if you have some examples on challenges, and I'll start off with Alexis.
Sure. So I will start with the sexy topic of contracts. So contractual and legal constraints. So we've all seen and signed BIM waivers, and no one wants to take ownership of their models and the work that's being done within them. So, what you end up with is clunky workflows, duplication of geometry, disparate data sets, added labor. It's just really wasteful. And I think, to create the elegant workflows that we seek, we need to get comfortable with taking ownership of our models. And to do that, right, we need contractual language that protects us, while at the same time moving us towards a model-led project where the model becomes a contract document. And that's going to be difficult. I think some of the, Dale touched on this, but we need standardization. We need data standards, or that piece of software that kind of is able to organize it. And I think we struggle with BIM standards in the US just because we don't have government mandates like some other countries around like mandating BIM and a countrywide standardization. So I put that out there. And then to kind of piggyback on what everyone else was talking about before, I don't like to talk about software, but software is a huge hurdle, specifically the rising costs and the lack of development of some of the big players. So by the time you build your ideal workflow with your apps of choice, it's often cost prohibitive. And then you end up with data loss across platforms, and it's just a bit messy. And then, then you need to either hire a consultant or employ your own application development team to get the integration and the customization you want. And then does it integrate with your external partners? So it's there's a lot there to be solved. But we've been talking about this, so people know this and they're working on it. And to just kind of echo what I said previously, I think what we need to do as an industry is make sure that we raise our voices and tell the developers what we want and not the other way around, and help guide the technology instead of what feels like, we're being handed kind of products now and then trying to fit the round peg in a square hole to make it work with, our internal processes and workflows.
Pete, you want to jump in on the hurdles?
Yeah, sure. Dale touched on it before. I mean, all these systems, speak different languages as well. And then we have APIs to get systems to talk to each other. So that's one hurdle. So if we could all sort of, like Alexa said, create standards or utilize the standards that are in place for communication protocols, that would really help. I think an education process, I don't think a lot of people or a lot of clients necessarily realize what you can do. So we need to educate them, and it's not terribly difficult to do all this. You just need to get the right people involved. So it needs to be designed correctly by someone who knows what they're doing up front, and it needs to be deployed by someone who also obviously knows what they're doing to make it all happen. And I think a lot of organizations don't want to be that guinea pig. So once we start to get a couple of these projects under our belt and they're proven that they work, then it'll give confidence to other clients that they can actually go out and deploy similar systems in their workplace.
Yeah, I'll just chime in briefly because I know we're running out of time. But so what are the barriers? Cost, like Alexis said, cost is always an issue. I mean, we're rolling out RPA solutions, automated workflow solutions. And the thing is with this, you can figure out your return on investment. Sometimes the ROI is pretty far out there. And if it's far out there, why would you do it, right? So people are questioning a lot of the automation projects because it's easy to figure out the ROI. Second barrier is just the pace of technology, the change in technology, then figuring out how it applies to whatever part of the process you're in, either the design build, managing a building that's already up and providing amenities to your tenants, that sort of stuff. And whatever problem you're trying to solve, the technologies involved in that problem solving are changing very quickly, and it's hard to keep track of it. Our job is to keep track of it. We lose track of it.
All right, we're going to go over to a question from the audience here from Stephen Flame. What are the panelists seeing in relation to adoption of technology in buildings and workplaces in the US as compared to Europe and Asia Pacific?
I'll jump in there. Well, I know coming from the Asia Pacific region, they seem to be a lot more willing to adopt new technologies. Like I know in Singapore, for example, there's a lot of facial recognition to whether that be to a theme park or to a building or things like that. So in the US, there seems to be a lot more restrictions, and mainly from what I gather, it's to do with privacy and that kind of thing, where it doesn't necessarily have that same sort of negative impact in other areas of the world. So yeah, so things like facial recognition. Yeah, I just think that there is, I think for some reason in Europe and other parts of the world, as I said, they're just willing to explore and experiment more with new technologies and deploy it because they do see those benefits.
Yeah, I think, in fact, I haven't even touched on it yet. So this is kind of the end process, right? You get the building up, you got tenants, security, right? And it goes around that facial recognition stuff. Everybody wants it, but then when you start thinking about, okay, what does that mean? Well, it means the building monitoring you, and then the owner monitoring you. And what are they doing with those data? But the other thing that this is firsthand experience with a client and someone actually, some tenants I know, is an amenity that's being offered is better internet security. So you know how like you go in and you get your internet, right? Now we're seeing people, and this is experience I'm having with friends in college towns with kids and my own kids. For an extra service, you can pay for better internet security, right? So it's kind of interesting how owners and are trying to come up with security-based amenities to offer to their tenants. But I don't agree with Pete. It's really hard in the U.S. because as soon as you start saying, hey, we're monitoring everybody coming into the lobby, everyone's going to freak out.
Yeah.
However, I think they're clever by going in, hey, we're going to monitor internet to keep out the phishing, the spam, kind of like a workplace. But they're doing it for the building. I don't know if that'll take off. I don't know if people pay for that because they want to do it themselves. But I've seen it very recently.
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely echo the privacy hurdles. There's a lot of interesting technology that we've seen over here that we just can't get an uptick with because of privacy issues of, right, the unions and whatnot, for better, for worse. But I also, right, just to kind of mention Singapore again, you have some countries where the governments are mandating certain levels of BIM and of, I guess just, standardizing BIM on projects, making it a requirement. And so when you have that out there, then that whole kind of cost analysis process is just like, well, we have to do this. So therefore, let's go full on, let's invest in it and be really good at it instead of, are we going to do BIM or not?
Well, we don't have any more questions at the moment. We've got a minute left. So anybody, want to give a shout out to someone or quick closing point?
I think the other technology that I'm excited about that I didn't touch on earlier was augmented reality. So I think that with organizations like Apple releasing their new Apple Augmented Reality glasses that'll come out next year. Obviously, it started with really Google Glass, but there's all these companies that are starting to produce augmented reality glasses where I think if you can design a pair of glasses where you can display content on the screens and it doesn't look like you've got a big headset on like a Microsoft Halo, then I think suddenly you can then share content. You can meet anywhere, anytime. Yeah, it doesn't have to, you could have it face-to-face meeting, share content. You could be on the other side of the world and share content, but you're basically taking that content with you. And so I see that as in the years to come, something that's going to be quite huge instead of relying on a screen on a wall.
All right. Well, we're at time. Alexis, Dale, Pete, that was awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep, thanks very much. Happy to be here.
Thank you. That was another fantastic panel. I like the forward-looking nature of it and the global perspective as well. This concludes today's program. The next forum is Public Projects Forum. This is a Public Projects Forum, Navigating Minority and Women-Owned Business Enterprise Programs, Public-Private Partnerships, and Other Public Procurement Programs. It'll be on November 10th. Information on the event is available on our events page, commercialobserver.com/events. Thank you to all for coming, and we hope to have you join us at that next event in November.